As Toastmasters, we often have the joy of answering a table topic. I sort of like table topics. At least I'm no longer terrified of them. However, I usually spend the rest of the day or the week thinking about what I wish I would have said. Last week, Christy was the topics master, and she assigned Eric and I to debate the merits of Excel. As you may have observed, that was sort of like tossing a raw steak to a couple of hungry tigers. I rarely want a table topic to go longer, but I think Eric and I could have gone on for several minutes. There just wasn't time. Now, Christy, you are to blame for today's presentation on Excel. If anyone is still conscious after my speech today, I hope to remember that it was you that brought up the topic. Now, actually, Christy, last week, I was ready to talk about your other question. You asked Nee to talk about his favorite coffee table. And Nee said he didn't have a coffee table. I feel bad. Nee did a good job, but I was eager to describe my favorite coffee table. Now, I think everybody should have a coffee table like this, and Nee, I'd be happy to share this one with you. Truthfully, though, I was glad for the topic of Excel. As I mentioned last week, I often say, I love Excel, I hate Excel. As a data consultant and business analyst, Excel is actually one of the biggest hammers in my toolbox. But just like with life, when you swing a big hammer, you can break a few things. Christy mentioned that she uses Excel a lot in her job at Mayo. Beware IT employees at Mayo. Now, one thing Excel is really good at is charts. People tend to either do pie charts or bar charts. Now, I can do those charts. For instance, here is a bar chart of my favorite pies. And here is a pie chart of my favorite bars. Even a data geek can get a little festive at times. This year, I like to have Gloria in Excel sheet Deo. Now, originally thought I could spend this whole presentation just on Excel jokes. There are many of them. There's so many, I had to sort through them, rank them for humor and nerdiness, clean them up for polite company, trim the list to only those that were really funny. On average, they were horrid. I decided that humor was not a good formula for success. Giving up on Excel jokes, let's get down to business. My task last week was to argue that Excel is bad. Now, I use Excel daily. I checked last night. I have over 5,000 spreadsheets on my PC. The other day, I was repeatedly hitting the undo button, and all of a sudden, I was 39 again. But I still have many valid concerns about the Excel tool. However, my mentor, Amit Ghosh, would have told me to limit it to 3. So those 3 are security, data integrity, and formatting. But don't relax too much because I can cram a lot of complaints into these 3 topics. One good thing about Excel is that it makes it easy to share information. You can share it with anybody. A huge risk of Excel is that it makes it easy to share information. Now, most of us have been burned in the past by hitting the reply all button to an email. Now, imagine the implications if you hit reply all with the wrong spreadsheet attached. Some of you may remember a few years ago when there was a data leak on the MinSure Health Exchange project. That was an Excel spreadsheet that somebody hit reply all to. Now, that guy shouldn't be trusted with an abacus, let alone a deadly weapon like Excel. It's easy to put data into Excel, but data is often entered incorrectly or entered manually. You fools! How can you trust mere humans with the important task of data entry? People have fat fingers and they can't spell, so they get inconsistent data. Whenever possible, link Excel to a database to pull the information into Excel, or use the data validation functions within Excel to have people choose from a drop-down list. Excel lets us put fancy formulas in there, but formulas are fragile. It only takes one miss key to delete the formula or to alter it or to save it in the wrong place. Now, Excel can protect functions or formulas from being altered, but I rarely see people actually use the protection feature. Now, let me show you an example of an egregious formula. I actually built this one, and I copied it to 15,000 cells in that spreadsheet. What could possibly go wrong? Now, this is egregious. When you have a formula that starts to look like this is an example that you need to put it in a database and use a reporting tool. I was hired by a hospital to build a complex model in Excel. I immediately counseled them to use a database instead. They didn't want to spend the money on a database, and they wanted a tool that everybody could use. I relented due to my agreeable nature and the high billing rate. The result was a monstrosity that analyzed 3 years of patient data for a variety of departments to predict how many RNs they would need at any given time. It took 120 pivot tables to assemble the data with hundreds of thousands of formulas. And it only cost them 5 times as much to have me do it in Excel than in a database. I mentioned there were 120 pivot tables. It took 2 minutes to load or refresh this spreadsheet. By the way, a pivot table walked into a bar and said, "Start a new tab for me." No. Now, those 120 pivot tables were all connected by over 3,000 lines of Visual Basic Code, or VBA. Now, if you've never seen VBA before, consider yourself blessed. 50 lines is considered a lethal dose. All of that resulted in this: a few blocks of data that told them whether they had too few RNs on staff or too many. Jobs depended on this. What could possibly go wrong? Problem is, it actually worked. The same guy hired me a few years later to do the same project for another hospital. This time, I prevailed and we used SQL Server. After a successful project, I gave him a short writing assignment. Now, we are probably all guilty of building spreadsheets with lots of headings and titles and subtotals. And you've probably seen spreadsheets that have monthly information in columns, and every month we add a new column, or tabs where we add a new tab every month. I hate those. In Excel, the data is also often the report. So we make it look like the report that we're going to distribute. And that makes it hard to work with the data. I don't like formatted reports. I like organized data. What I'm about to show you is an example of how Excel imagines itself to be a database. But if you're going to do it wrong, at least let me tell you how to do it wrong right. Let's use a real spreadsheet that I'm getting ready for a board meeting next week. This is a general ledger trial balance from Quickbooks. And if you look at this, you'll see that it has 3 columns for every month going off to the right. It has the actual amount for the month. It has the budgeted amount for the month and whether it was over or under, whether that account was over or under budget. And then it repeats it again for September, for October, for November, what comes next, December, all the way across. And the result is something that looks like this. Now, only an accountant could stand working with something like this. I get this, and I have to start reorganizing it into real data that I can use. So let's start by, instead of having the columns data all go to the right horizontally, let's stack it up vertically. So I put September under August and October under September. And so we have a vertical stack of day guide. I get rid of all of the headings and subtotals. So what I'm left with is just a pure table of data. I add in a month column in front of it so I can separate the different monthly information. Now I can put a filter on this already, and I already can work with that with much easier than with the other format. I add a couple descriptor columns there so we could do more sorting and summarization later. I turn that data into a range, and then I attach pivot tables to that range. And pivot tables are wonderful because once you build them, you can change the filter and it just redraws the chart automatically. So you never have to redraw another graph. And once you have all those pivot tables built, you can tie them together with slicers. So you can choose which month, and that filters through to all the pivot tables. You can make copies of that and put it on one dashboard page. So you can create your own little dashboard in Excel and see all the information you want in one place. Now, in closing, I will cease to torture you on the topic of Excel. In fact, later this winter, I'm going to give up spreadsheets for 40 days and 40 nights. It will be Excel Lent. Mr. Toastmaster.